funny thing is, I paid for all of this.
Ever walk into a place and immediately know you don't belong? That was me on Saturday night, stepping into the Grand Marlowe Hotel with all the enthusiasm of an unwanted guest. My loyal Honda Civic sat awkwardly among a fleet of polished BMWs and Mercedes, the kind of lineup that screamed money and pedigree. It wasn't exactly the type of car that valet attendants brag about, but it's reliable and doesn't bleed my bank account dry. The Grand Marlowe was flaunting its opulence, towering marble pillars, endless gold trim, and chandeliers sparkling like something out of a storybook. Through the enormous windows, I caught glimpses of clinking glasses and that fake high-pitched laughter people break out after a few glasses of champagne when they're desperate to impress. I tugged at my charcoal suit, the overpriced one my wife Olivia insisted I needed for these so-called special family occasions. Translation: events hosted by her side of the family, where my wallet somehow always ends up thinner. Still, the fit was decent, and for a moment I almost felt like I belonged as I stepped into a lobby that looked like Versailles had been transplanted to the suburbs. The place was buzzing. Waiters in crisp bow ties floated by with trays of champagne that probably cost a week's salary per bottle, while guests draped in designer brands swapped vacation stories about the Hamptons and nodded like they were networking royalty. Everywhere I turned, golden banners shouted about Harold and Margaret Fletcher's 50 years of marriage, an achievement mostly underwritten, at least recently, by yours truly. At the reception desk, a young woman with flawless makeup and a rehearsed smile was scanning names on what looked like the guest list from hell. She radiated that polished kind of politeness that says, "I'll help you, but please don't make this awkward." "Alex Carter," I said, straightening my tie, trying to sound more important than I felt. "Here for the Fletcher anniversary celebration." She scrolled, her manicured finger dragging down an endless screen of names, her brow tightening as she searched. Not exactly a reassuring sign. "I'm sorry, sir," she finally said, her tone already apologetic. "I don't see your name on the list." For a second, I thought it had to be a mistake. Maybe Olivia missed something with the RSVP, or maybe the coordinator messed up. Who gets forgotten at their in-laws' milestone celebration? "I'm Alex Carter," I repeated more firmly. "Harold and Margaret's son-in-law. The reason I'm even here tonight." Her eyes softened, sympathy flickering there, but her voice remained professional. "I really do understand, sir, but your name simply isn't listed." Before I could even process what the hell was happening, I noticed two security guards approaching. These weren't your typical rent-a-cop types either. These guys looked like they could bench press my Honda and still have energy left over for a protein shake. The first guard, built like a linebacker with arms that could snap branches, leaned in so close his aftershave stung my nose. "Sir, you're being asked to leave," he said in a voice as icy as the champagne chilling nearby. As if that humiliation weren't enough, his partner chimed in, loud enough to draw stares. "Escort this beggar out," he barked, tossing the word like a punchline. Beggar. That single word ricocheted through my head, heavy with absurdity. I froze, stunned, trying to process the sheer audacity of it. Me, dressed in a suit worth more than some people's rent, labeled a beggar at the very event I'd bankrolled. And that's the insane part. I had footed the bill for the whole lavish circus. 240 grand. Venue, catering, flowers, entertainment, decorations, and what Margaret coyly called special touches. Translation: that ridiculous swan-shaped ice sculpture and the live jazz quartet. Just 48 hours earlier, I'd wired the last payment. Olivia had shown up with tearful eyes, explaining how her parents were drowning under final costs and how it was on us to save the day. She leaned on all the right words: family, duty, love, legacy. And like the fool I must have been, I didn't hesitate. I transferred the money without a second thought. Now I stood in a ballroom bursting with music I'd paid for, guests toasting with champagne I'd funded, decorations glowing thanks to my bank account, treated as if I'd crashed the party I had literally bought. Something inside me shifted. Not just anger, though that was boiling. Not only humiliation, though it burned hot. No, this was sharper, cooler, edged with purpose. I didn't argue, didn't shout, didn't demand to speak to management. I simply glanced at the two hulks blocking me, then at the receptionist avoiding my eyes, then at the glittering celebration unfolding without me. And I made a choice. Without a word, I walked back through those towering glass doors and into the crisp night air. Something in me had snapped, replaced by a dangerous kind of calm. The part willing to bankroll people who treated me like an ATM was gone. In its place, clarity. I slid into my Honda Civic, engine off, parked across from the hotel like some uninvited spectator. I watched the steady stream of luxury cars, Mercedes, BMWs, Lexuses, the occasional Porsche, roll up for valet. One by one, familiar faces emerged. Harold's law partner who never paid his share. Margaret's committee friends who spent more money planning charity luncheons than they raised. Olivia's cousins who only showed up for food and gossip. All of them strutted in their designer outfits, posing under that gaudy golden arch that cost more than most weddings. Champagne poured endlessly, laughter rang out, and the Fletchers basked in 50 years of celebrated matrimony. The irony was suffocating. None of them knew. Not a single guest realized the man tossed out like trash was the one who had funded every drop of their luxury. My phone buzzed with alerts, bank notifications confirming payment after payment, venue deposit, catering balance, entertainment fee. Each vibration was another receipt for my own public humiliation. But here's where the night changed. The anger dissolved, the humiliation cooled. What replaced it was something clean, sharp, undeniable. Clarity. Like a windshield suddenly wiped clear, I could finally see exactly where I was headed. I flipped open my laptop right there in the passenger seat, balancing it on my knees like it was some kind of portable war room. What Harold and Margaret never grasped was that I wasn't just a gullible benefactor tossing cash around. I was the name behind every account, every transfer, every automatic draft that kept their picture-perfect life running like clockwork. My banking dashboard lit up, a glowing map of their dependency. For 3 years, Harold's mortgage overpayments had been draining from my account. Margaret's country club dues, because apparently social standing requires $20 salads and endless tennis matches. Payroll for the staff maintaining Harold's private villa, yes, a villa, complete with full-time employees whose checks I'd been quietly covering. There were more. Business loans I co-signed when Harold needed credibility, luxury car leases, insurance premiums, property upkeep for homes I'd never stepped foot in. It was less a support system and more a web of obligations, with me trapped in the center, catching invoices instead of flies. One by one, I began dismantling it. Cancel transfer, terminate standing payment, freeze account access, delete scheduled transactions. Each click was like pulling a nail out of a coffin I hadn't realized I was in. Gone was Harold's charity fund that never funded actual charities. Canceled. Margaret's flower deliveries for her endless garden parties. Axed. The BMW lease in Harold's name, but on my credit. Signed back when his temporary credit issue mysteriously dragged on for 5 years. The whole teardown took 23 minutes flat. In less than half an hour, I'd unraveled years of entanglement, cutting $240,000 worth of obligations, payments, and transfers. At 9:42 p.m., my phone lit up. Olivia first, straight to voicemail. Then Harold, then Margaret. After that, numbers I didn't recognize. Family, no doubt, realizing the golden faucet had been turned off. By the time I started the engine, my missed call counter read 136. That's what desperation looks like in digital form. Honestly, it sounded like music. The strange thing about being the responsible one in the family is everyone expects explosions, yelling, texts full of rage, shouting matches. But the most devastating weapon can be silence. No scenes, no tantrums. Just surgical precision while you dismantle the system they've been bleeding you with. The next morning, clarity greeted me with my coffee. The kind of clarity that only comes when you finally stop lying to yourself. I decided it was time to see just how deep this rabbit hole went. I called Marcus Lee, my go-to for corporate fraud. "Marcus, it's Alex Carter," I told him. "I need 4 background checks. Yesterday." 2 days later, he rang back. "You sitting down?" Bad start. "Harold and Margaret Fletcher aren't broke. Combined net worth just shy of $2 million. Harold's law firm is printing money. 3 fully owned properties, 1 in Martha's Vineyard. Margaret's investment accounts? Strong enough to make hedge fund guys jealous." The coffee slipped from my hand. "What about Ryan?" "Liquid assets over 200 grand, plus a trust worth 300. His sports car, paid cash. His apartment, owned outright." "And Olivia?" "That's the kicker. Your wife's been moving money from your joint accounts into a separate one under her maiden name. 18 months of transfers, just over $150,000. Looks exactly like she's building an escape fund." It hit me like a brick. My in-laws had been siphoning me dry for years, and my wife had apparently been packing her parachute with my money. The betrayal was so thorough it almost felt choreographed. I dialed my attorney, Clara Jensen. "I need retroactive loan agreements," I said. Every so-called gift I've handed over to the Fletchers needs to be treated as loans with interest. Clara gave a low whistle. How much are we talking? 412,000 with interest. She practically laughed. Perfect. Since they never signed paperwork, we set the terms. 12% annually, compounded, backdated, plus late penalties. This is going to be fun. Saturday morning, I drove to the Fletcher mansion with legal documents. I walked through their unlocked front door and found them all in the sitting room having their weekly strategy session on maintaining their lifestyle while looking sympathetic enough to keep the money flowing. Harold was in his leather chair reading the Wall Street Journal. Margaret was on the silk sofa flipping through a luxury travel magazine. Ryan was scrolling through his phone checking his investment portfolio, and Olivia was sitting primly with an expression that suggested she was trying to figure out how to spin recent events as somehow being my fault. I walked to the center of the room, set my briefcase down on their antique coffee table, and opened it with deliberate ceremony. "Good morning, family," I said, pulling out manila folders. "I hope everyone's having a relaxing weekend because we need to have a little chat about our financial arrangements." I dropped the folders on the table with enough force to make them thud against the expensive wood. "You have 3 options," I said, my voice calm and professional. "Option 1. Sign these loan agreements and repay every cent over the next 5 years with interest calculated at commercial rates plus a risk premium for borrowers with questionable disclosure practices." I opened the second folder. "Option 2. We terminate all financial connections permanently. You keep what you've already taken. I write it off as a learning experience, and we never speak about money again." I opened the third folder and pulled out the evidence file. Option 3. Face a lawsuit for financial fraud, intentional misrepresentation, and unjust enrichment backed by enough evidence to make this a case study for law schools. The silence was so complete you could have heard a pin drop. Olivia tried her sweet, reasonable tone. "Alex, honey, I think you're overreacting. We can work this out like adults without all these dramatic legal documents." That's when I played my ace in the hole. I pulled out my phone and hit play on Harold's recorded confessions from his country club bragging sessions. The trick is keeping our personal ATM happy with just enough appreciation to keep the money flowing. Alex is so eager to help family that he never asks the right questions about whether we actually need the help. The recording continued with Harold's laughter and his friends' encouraging chuckles as he described me as useful but socially awkward, and explained how easy it was to bleed the golden goose without me ever realizing what was happening. Margaret's voice joined in, adding commentary about how I was generous to a fault, and how they'd learned to time their financial emergencies for maximum emotional impact. The color drained from Harold's face so fast, I thought he might faint. Margaret looked like someone had just informed her that her entire social circle had been talking about her behind her back. Ryan's mouth fell open, and Olivia's carefully composed expression crumbled into genuine fear. Harold tried to bluster. "This is blackmail. You can't just retroactively change gifts into loans." Actually, Harold, when gifts were obtained through misrepresentation of financial need, it's called fraud. The retroactive loan agreements are the generous option here. Margaret played the family card. "We've always been there for you, always welcomed you into our home, always treated you like our own son." "You're absolutely right, Margaret. Family doesn't do this to each other. Family doesn't spend 10 years lying about financial emergencies while secretly having enough money to buy a small island. Family doesn't call their son-in-law a beggar and have him thrown out of a party he paid for, and family definitely doesn't move money into secret accounts while planning their escape route." That last comment hit Olivia like a physical blow as she realized I knew about her little nest egg. After what felt like an eternity, Harold asked in a defeated tone, "What are the terms of option 2? Complete financial separation. You keep everything you've already taken, I write off the losses, and we never discuss money again. No more loans, no more gifts, no more emergency assistance. You're on your own financially from this point forward." 2 days later, they chose option 2, complete financial separation, but not before trying every manipulation tactic in the book. Harold called my boss to complain about my erratic behavior. Margaret contacted mutual friends to paint me as someone going through a difficult time. Ryan even showed up at my office trying to convince me I was destroying the family over a misunderstanding. But the real fallout came when word got out through the family grapevine. My phone started blowing up with calls from relatives I hadn't heard from in years. Not angry calls defending the Fletcher family honor, but apology calls. Olivia's cousin Sarah apologized for comments about how lucky the Fletchers were to have such a generous son-in-law. Harold's brother admitted he'd always suspected something was off about Harold's constant financial emergencies. The most revealing call came from Ryan's ex-girlfriend, who felt compelled to share some additional context. Ryan used to brag about how easy it was to get money from you. He called you their family ATM and said his parents had trained you to respond to sob stories. She even sent screenshots of group chats where Margaret referred to me as useful but socially awkward, and discussed strategies for timing requests for maximum emotional impact. For the first time in years, I felt lighter. The weight of constantly worrying about other people's financial problems, the stress of being the family's go-to solution for every crisis, the guilt of wondering if I was doing enough to help, all of it was gone. I'd been carrying the financial and emotional burden of 4 other adults for so long that I'd forgotten what it felt like to only be responsible for my own life. 3 months later, I was sitting in a cafe in Prague sipping coffee that actually tasted like coffee when I got a text from Clara with an update that made me laugh out loud. Harold had tried to refinance his mortgage and discovered that removing my name from all those loan guarantees had seriously damaged his credit rating. The man who'd spent years bragging about bleeding the golden goose was now finding out what life was like when the goose flies south and doesn't come back. Cutting off the Fletchers had been like removing a financial tumor. That $240,000 I'd been hemorrhaging annually into their lifestyle suddenly became available for my own life. The first thing I did was pay off every remaining debt I had. Student loans, credit card balances, that car payment that had been hanging around for 3 years. Being completely debt-free felt like taking off shoes that had been too tight for so long I'd forgotten what comfortable felt like. Next, I upgraded my business in ways I'd been putting off for years because I was always sending money to the Fletcher Family Emergency Fund instead of investing in my own future. New equipment, better software, a marketing campaign that actually worked. All the things I've been telling myself I couldn't afford while I was busy affording Harold's gambling debts and Margaret's shopping obsession disguised as charity work. But the real game changer was this 3-month European vacation I was currently enjoying. Paris, Rome, Barcelona, Prague, Vienna, all the places I'd dreamed of visiting but could never afford because I was too busy funding other people's dreams of country club memberships and luxury car leases. I was staying in decent hotels, eating at restaurants that didn't require me to check my bank balance first, and generally living like someone who actually had money instead of someone constantly giving it away. Every meal I bought, every hotel room I booked, every train ticket I purchased was paid for with money that would have otherwise gone to fund Harold's wine club membership or Margaret's monthly flower arrangements. I'd even bought myself a decent car when I got back. Nothing too fancy, just a reliable sedan that didn't make me feel like I was driving a testament to my own screwed-up financial priorities. The best part about my new financial freedom wasn't the money itself. It was the complete absence of stress about other people's problems. No more panicked phone calls about family emergencies, no more guilt trips about family loyalty, no more sleepless nights wondering if I was doing enough to help people who didn't actually need help, so much as they needed someone to subsidize their lifestyle choices. Olivia had moved out while I was in Europe, taking her secret bank account and her plans for financial independence with her. The divorce papers were waiting when I got back, which saved me the trouble of filing them myself. She'd even left a note explaining how this was all for the best and how we'd both be happier apart, probably the first completely honest thing she'd said to me in years. I signed the papers without a lawyer, kept the house, kept my business, and kept my sanity. She got her secret savings account and whatever assets she could prove were hers, which wasn't much since most of our major purchases had been funded by my income, while hers had apparently been getting quietly diverted into her escape fund. As I sat in that Prague cafe watching normal people live normal lives without having to fund their in-laws' luxury lifestyles, I realized that for the first time in a decade, I was living life on my own terms. My money was mine. My time was mine. My stress level was manageable, and my future was something I got to plan instead of something that happened to me while I was busy solving other people's problems. The golden goose had finally learned to fly, and the view from up here was absolutely spectacular.